My name is Wit López. I am a performance artist, a multidisciplinary visual artist. I also am an arts administrator and a cultural advocate. I use they, them pronouns, and I reside in Philadelphia. When I was doing a lot of work in person, my visual stuff would mostly be tactile so that people were allowed to walk up to it and touch it. And usually it was things made out of yarn, things made out of fabric, things made out of paper. There was always like some type of fiber involved. And in a lot of other ones, there was also like some type of wooden component involved. Usually something that was upcycled, not something that was made directly by me, even though I do some woodworking. I believe a lot in breaking social norms that we're taught. So I love creating art that breaks social norms and social expectations. And part of the reason why it's important for me to break those social norms and expectations is for a few reasons. One of those reasons is access for disabled people. It's really important to me as a disabled and chronically ill person to make sure that people like me, who usually the art world can be very cold toward us and very exclusive of us and our work and our experiences. I try to make spaces inclusive. I got my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine, which is 2-part, last week. I got it through a community organization known as ACE. They're a CDC here, a community development corporation in Philadelphia, particularly in like the Spanish-speaking area of North Philadelphia. Every other place that I would have gone for the vaccine that I could, like my doctor's office or the convention center or the Leocoris Center, they're all pretty far from my house. Like I would have to catch an Uber or a Lyft or something to get down there since I'm still not taking public transportation. I mean, I know they say like it's not a cure for COVID, but it will help to decrease the severity of the symptoms if you do contract it, which is still terrible and still terrifying. Gotta do what you gotta do, right? I mean, as a person who's chronically ill and disabled and already has lung issues, for me, it's important to maintain the pieces of health that I have. And there's some work that I wanted to do in the community that can't be done unless I leave my house. I'm not thrilled about leaving the house, especially not for work purposes, ever. I do not want to prioritize work over my body. I do not want to prioritize work over my health, whether it's physical or mental health. I am a working class person. I am not wealthy yet. And so I have to work. I also, the way that my disabilities impact me means that I can't necessarily qualify for disability compensation or disability benefits. So I just kind of live in this space of limbo where it's like, well, when work comes, I take work. Not all the time. I don't take every job offer, but the work that I can do, the work that my body can actually get done, the work that my mind can get done. Yeah, once I have both doses and after the suggested waiting period, I'm probably going to start doing some archival research in person. So that I can work on this project that I've been working on for the Chronicling Resistance Activist-Curator Fellowship project. But it's like, gee, in order to be paid for my research, right, for my research fellowship, I have to go put my life at risk. I hate to be putting work before health. And I think that so many places have not confronted the way that they uphold ableism and the ways that they deny people like accessibility tools. We need real justice. We need real disability justice. And a lot of able-bodied people only learned it temporarily through the pandemic. When they wanted to do their panel discussions and their workshops virtually, then they did it, but they still didn't have ASL, right? Didn't want to teach in person, they could find a way to teach online. But for those of us who have been begging for that kind of access for years, for decades, we get a glimpse of knowing that it's possible through the interactions of able-bodied people with the pandemic. Not because we asked for these access tools years ago, not because we've been advocating for these things for generations, but simply because this also impacted people who are able-bodied. And I'm not saying that everybody should have this really intense fear around it, but that people should act in a way that they care about preserving the lives of others. And that has not happened. A lot of people are acting in ways where it shows that they don't even care about preserving their own life. But I truly think that part of this lack of understanding is because of the lack of understanding of how science works. And I mean, I don't mean to be that person about science and everything, because we know there's a lot of science that's very broken and very fucked up and promotes ableism, racism, fat phobia, transphobia, sexism. Like, we know that that kind of science exists too. And I'm not excusing that at all. I'm just currently talking about how vaccines work. I wish that better education around this was available, and also that government institutions and educational institutions weren't more concerned about how money is spent, how money is gained, instead of being concerned about the lives of the people that they serve. Kind of wish there was more concern for the people. I often think about the ways that choreography can be accessible to my body. And so a lot of my performances center that for me, you know, on the back end of things. For me, I'm thinking about how does this work for my body? How does it work for my health? How does it work for my lungs? How does it work for my joints or my muscles, my tendons that have already been strained and sprained and ripped and torn? Like, how does this work, right? So it's like, so I have this hip pain and this back pain and knee pain and ankle pain and occasional shoulder dislocation. And still I dance, right? But something that was bothering me like in the past couple of years was balance issues. And so to personally remedy my balance issues in dance, if I was doing certain things, I would do it with my feet wider apart so that I could brace myself if my body was like, whoa, 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 you know? And that's what I would do. So there's a lot of videos of me doing performances, and, you know, I might be moving my feet and, you know, doing whatever. But then once I'm standing still, my feet are pretty far apart. And it's for balance issues. Something that kind of evolved, I would say, over the past 2 years has been leg pain, like overall leg pain. Where it's coming from, don't know. So, I mean, a couple years ago, I couldn't even feel my left leg. And the doctor was like, I could still walk on it, but I literally felt nothing. Concerning, yeah, concerning. And, you know, I went to the doctor. They thought that maybe I had like a slip disc or something. You know, they I guess, did x-rays or whatever of my spine, and we're like, nope, we don't see any slip discs. we don't know what's going on. So just as quickly as that numbness in my left leg came on and it stayed for maybe like 2 months, it went away. I didn't take any medicine. I didn't go to any physical therapy. The doctors were like, we don't know what's happening. It went away. So, in addition to being like, what does choreography look like when you have searing back pain and searing, hip pain, and now leg pain in both legs, and like shoulder dislocation, and then pain in your ankles and pain in your, like, what does choreography look like? Because it's like, a lot of folks will tell you like, oh, if you can't stand while you're dancing, there's always the option of chair choreography, which is true. And I think it's a really amazing accessibility tool for folks to still be able to dance from a sitting position. But I cannot sit in those comfortably I can't sit in a chair, period, right now, without extreme leg pain. So what does choreography look like when, if you stand, you have balance problems, if you sit, you have excruciating pain, and the only time you're not in that extreme pain is if you're laying down on the floor? Child, I don't know the answer to that question, but listen, when y'all figure it out, y'all let me know. Because I would love to continue. Like, I love dance. I love movement. I love it. But how do I make it accessible if standing and sitting are not really accessible to me? I just think that I don't know folks who have made space for dancers laying on the ground. Would I like to see it? Absolutely. Because then that would make dance spaces really accessible to me. I want to do what my dance teachers taught me back in the day about, you got to have levels. You're up, you're mid, you're down, you're mid, you're up, It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Like, I would love to do that, maybe. But the balance issue and the pain, and I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. It's important to me to create things that I can interact with regardless of how well my hearing is working or how well my vision is working. And also, like, being someone on the spectrum with ADHD, who also loves to move. Like, I love being in motion. These things, by creating exhibitions where there's lots of things to be in motion with, I create audience spaces where the audiences are constantly moving as well, because people want to touch art. So I create spaces that are safe for me as a person who needs to be like, I want to do this, I want to do that, by giving other people the space to do this, do that, do this, do that, so that people like me aren't the oddballs out, because we want to move and we want to touch things, and we need to interact with things. So my performances are similar to that, in that I constantly break what's considered in theater to be the fourth wall. And that's also for accessibility purposes. I try to be mindful of folks who have conditions where they make sounds, or where they vocalize and can't control it, like Tourette syndrome, for instance. So if I create a space where the whole audience is in an uproar, they're not just observers, but they're now part of the performance. They are performers, they're participants. So by doing that, it allows me to create a space that's accessible for folks who need to vocalize loudly, or who vocalize and are often considered disruptive of performance spaces. So they might not go to a performance because they know that they're going to be looked at or shushed or mistreated by other people in the audience. So I disrupt what's considered audience culture or audience acceptable behavior, audience expectations, by kind of disrupting that fourth wall. So it allows me as a person who wants to move in a different way with the audience, but it also gives the audience space, if they need to move, to do so. Those of us who are socialized out of it, it's not that we don't feel it anymore, that we don't need to do it, but it's like this nagging. For me, it's nagging to sit there and not move, when I'd rather be like standing, moving, maybe pacing the floor. Yeah, but people socialize us out of it to make us more acceptable, right? So I purposely create audience spaces where the norm is what we consider a not acceptable audience member. That way, the whole audience is doing it, and the people who normally would be outcasted for it are not outcasted because everyone's making noise, everyone's loud, everyone's moving. So instead, it becomes normalized in the space, and kind of thereby makes the space a little more accessible for folks experiencing those experiences. Additionally, something that I think people don't notice is that so I can't stand for extended periods of time. So even though I dance in my performances and everything. So what I'll do is I'll switch off with people in the audience, or I'll distract the audience from the fact that I just decided to take a seat, which allows me time to catch my breath as somebody who's been diagnosed with asthma and chronic bronchitis, and who was born with undersized lungs. It allows me to breathe for accessibility purposes, right? It also allows me to rest my body, my legs, which are probably in pain by that time. and just gives me the space to make the performance accessible for myself, while also giving the audience space to have fun that they didn't know they were going to probably have. So yeah, but what I realized is by prioritizing fun and joy and foolishness and absurdity and clowning in my performances, it actually makes them accessible, which is like really, really interesting. It's really interesting because I don't think that a lot of us think of foolishness as a means to access. And I mean access like as in disability justice, but it is, and it can be. And that's absolutely what I use it for, both for access, as an access tool for myself, and also as an access tool for disabled audience members. Prior to this, something else that I enjoyed doing was having one of those carnival popcorn makers. So I had one, like a red one with the white stripes on it and the little red and white cartons to put popcorn in. And I would just pop fresh popcorn in these spaces. Additionally, at some performances, I would hand out things, fiber art things. So say, for instance, if I'm wearing a wig made out of these, I'm going to hand these out to the audience too. I'm going to be like, you get a braid, and you get a braid, and you get a braid. And even though it seems ridiculous, it's an access tool for low vision folks. So that's important to me because I feel like a lot of times for able-bodied people, performances are multi-sensory experiences. And when people decide to make the theater accessible for, oh, it's disability night, everybody who's disabled can come to the theater, and the lights are going to be low and the sound is going to be low, and, so that you won't feel overstimulated. And while I appreciate that folks think in that way or try to be accessible in that way, it tends to leave out folks who need those things. It's not access for everyone. So pretty much by popping fresh popcorn and by handing out things to the audience, I'm giving people a multi-sensory experience who might not be able to see me. or maybe not hear me, but they can smell the popcorn and they can touch the braids that are similar to the braids that I have on as a wig. It's important to me to make spaces into multi-sensory spaces and not just be like, oh, did you see that? Or, oh, did you hear that? Because yeah, I think that you can create performances that are so multi-layered that people, regardless of their the senses that they might be lacking, can still have a multisensory experience. And it'll be a different multisensory experience than a person with other senses, but they all had a multisensory experience in the space.